This is going to be a quick stream about making some of the art and code for the house that the NPCs are going to build. Everything I've shown so far is in a little demo of squares, just rectangles rendered in a browser, and it's not the actual game art. This isn't going to be the game art either, but this is going to be sort of the template for it. What I'm trying to do is make some sort of tileable wall and floor that has different ways of connecting, and we'll choose different tiles that I've drawn for each piece. So there could be a corner piece, there could be a straight piece that goes east to west, a straight piece that goes north to south, there could be a cross if two walls intersect each other, and so on. These are made, as far as I know, by drawing all the permutations and then coming up with a way to detect which one you need to display. What I've got open here is a video I made a long time ago, about 2 years ago, and it was about water flow, like trying to do some nifty water flow. And that's much cooler than what I'm doing now, but I'm showing this video to show the kind of art I'm going for. Here, we can see we're inside of a house. If I rewind a little bit, we'll make it to... Actually, I don't know if there's any point I'm outside this house. There will be later. Let me skip around some more. So here I'm outside the house. Might be hard to see exactly, but there's a roof now in the house. And if I rewind a little bit, at some point the character is in the house, and then the roof is peeled back to see the interior of the house. And here's the interior of the house. We've got this really ugly square looking pattern for the floor. And then we've got some walls. I'm going to try and recreate this. This was always placeholder artwork. It needed to actually be drawn with whatever patterns were going to be on it, be it something that looks like wood or something that looks like stone or maybe something stucco-ish. We'll see what kind of materials make sense for the game. But right now I'm going to go ahead and try and remake or reverse engineer this and get back to the original tiles. To that effect, I'm beginning with a really simple sprite sheet, which looks like this, which doesn't look like a whole lot. But what it is that the first tile is going to be the tile that gets used for a floor if the floor is just one tile alone. It's not surrounded by any other materials. It's going to connect to other tiles as the other tiles get put down. So I'm actually going to draw over this little template just so I can see it as I try and write some code for it, so I can see where the edges are. I'm just going to put some little pink lines near the edges and then render it, and we can see how it works. So this is going to be a tile that has 4 edges that do not touch the same tile. It will be like if you were to drop this tile down in the middle of a grassy field, this is the tile it would select to render. This tile next to it is a tile which has no edges. It'll be the center tile of a house. Here would be, if there was a skinny piece of tile going left to right, here would be a skinny piece right to left. Here's a top edge, right edge, bottom edge, left edge. Here we have a corner piece. All these are in this row are corner pieces. The pink would be the sides that are facing the exterior of this pattern I'm trying to make. And then the last row down here would be a piece that's surrounded by another material on 3 sides, but touches the main block of tiles on one side. So there we have nothing touching to the bottom, nothing touching to the left, or pardon, the opposite of that. Now the goal isn't to have a flat looking tile like this. Some art would be on here like this would be, well, the square ones are going to be for the floor, so this would be like a wood boards pattern or maybe stone tiles or pavers or something like that. And hopefully I can use it to make a wall later on, which is going to have depth to it. It won't be flat. So there's my tiny sprite sheet of floor tiles, which doesn't look like anything. I've got a little bit of code started for it. All I've got so far is, well, the code that loads the file and shows it here in this window. And then I have something that will make a random matrix, a random 2D array of the numbers 0 and 1. And I'm going to use that to place a random configuration of tiles. In fact, I have the code for that already. So here we have some tiles being drawn. Every time they're drawn now, they're always going to be this top left tile. The goal is to write the code that's going to be able to tell whether a tile is touching another tile of the same material as its neighbor, and then pick a different one of these pieces of, pick a different sprite, basically. So, for example, this one should have picked the sprite where it says it is open to the bottom. This one should have picked the one where it's open top and bottom. This one should have picked the I'm a bottom left corner piece, and so on and so forth. I think it'll randomly generate each time too, so we can try it out. So for detecting whether a tile has other tiles as its neighbor, I think I'm just going to do a brute force scan of it, and I'm going to check just all around it. And for now, I'm not going to do anything relating to the art yet. I'm just going to save that data and then work with it later. My idea so far is, say, for any given tile, we'll see what type it is, we'll store what it is, and then we'll begin to look at its neighbors and see if they're the same thing. When looking at a neighbor, I'm going to call this function called isMatch, and first thing I'm going to make sure is that the neighbor we're checking is within the bounds of this shape, so I don't get an error. So make sure it's in the matrix, and then I guess the next thing I'm going to check is if it's the same type as the tile we're looking around. So now I have got a little function that says check the tile at 2, 2, which I'm guessing is this tile. And then I'm, just as a test, checking in one direction. I'm saying go to x plus 1, which theoretically is this one. Unless my x and y are inverted, which I'm not sure, I'll have to check. And then it says, see if that is a match. Is that the same type of tile as this tile was? And currently, it is, but it's saying it's not. So we'll see if my x and y are inverted, or what else could be happening. So now it says at 2, 2, we're looking for a 0. This is a 0. This would be a 1. Now we're going to look at x plus 1, and it's not going to be the same. And what was here was a number 1. We'll see. Is it right? Nope, it's not right. So now I've made it so the whole matrix of zeros and ones is all a 1, which in this case will render as a tile. And it says they're not the same. So the error is in the check to see what they are. Yeah, it says I'm looking for a 1, and then I found a 1, which is not the same. Oh, I made a real simple mistake. I wasn't passing in what to search for in my little hacky looking function here. So now it says it was the same. Now to bring it back to having some variety to see if it's actually right. Here, I'm going to make it the top left one to make it easier. So we start at the top left one, and then we ask, is the one to your right the same? In this case, no. And it says no, so it's right. In this case, these two are the same, and it says they're the same, so it's working there too. These all appear to work. One last case I'm going to check is if they're both zeros. So now the grid is nothing, and it does say the top left is the same as the one to its right. So it looks like that is going to be an adequate way of checking. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat that and check in all 4 directions, because that is what I'm going to use to select which one of these pieces of tile artwork it's going to use. And then we'll finally get to see these little pink indicators suggest where the edge really should be for the whole shape. So now I am storing information for all 4 neighbors. So I'm calling them right, left, up, and down. And suppose I should log some more information to the console before I move on to the next step. I don't want to just assume that that works. So I'm starting with, let's see, it goes right, left, up, down for the checks. And this is the tile that's being checked, and none of its neighbors are the same, and it's saying they're all false. None of them are the same. So that's right so far. Now it says to the right is the same. To the left is false. Up is false. Down is the same. So it's right again. I keep checking this top right tile, which should always say false for these 2 areas, which are not part of this array. So I'm going to move over to this tile and start looking around it instead. So this one, the only right answer should be that down is true. And we'll see that the last thing here is true. I'm going to make that message a little easier to see, actually. So now I added some labels. This one says to the right is, actually it's this tile. To the right of this is false. It's not the same as it. Left is false. Up is the same. Down is the same. So I'm content with that. I think this works. Now for the fun part. Per this these variables, right, left, up, and down, I'm going to have to pick one of these different tiles to display. There's probably a clever way to do it, but I'm not going to do it in a clever way because it doesn't come to mind immediately. I'm going to do it in a brute force type of way, like I'm just going to write every condition that there is for all these tiles. So if they're all false, then we draw this tile, the tile which has a border on all of its edges and this little pink indicator to say that's the outside. Although I guess I'm not onto that quite yet. I have to do the more fundamental part of treating this like a sprite sheet and naming each tile within it. They're all 16 by 16 pixels, so I'm just going to break this up into a sprite sheet. I'm just going to name each one of these tiles before putting them into this shape down here. I'm going to call this top one the lone tile, because it's a tile that gets picked when it's alone. It would be like this tile, this tile, and this tile should pick this pattern. Probably going to regret this brute force approach almost immediately here. This would be a center tile. It's hard to see, but it has no borders, so it's the tile that gets picked when it's in the middle of a larger shape. So before I go any further with my crazy naming schema here, I'm going to try and draw each one of these tiles individually just to confirm that I do have the right sprite sheet positions for them. The syntax for drawing in HTML5 is something I've just memorized, but it's a crazy thing. You begin by saying the image you're drawing from, then you say the x, y, height and width of a square that you'd like to select from that image, and then you specify another square to where you will draw it. So you can cut a piece out of a sprite sheet, and then you could draw it at any scale you want to another spot. For me, I'm just copying a square out of it to a square on the screen, so a lot of the numbers will end up the same. So that's ridiculously sloppy, but in theory, it's going to look up the coordinates of one of these tiles I've named, and then it's going to draw it to x and y. And it assumes a whole bunch of stuff is global. But it's just a prototype. Hopefully it works. So now I said draw the tile that I named lone to over here. So that works so far. I'm going to try the other ones I've made up called the center tile. I call this open left right, open up down. So here's a center tile, has no borders. And here's a tile that's open on its left and right. Or really, rather I should say, it connects to the pattern of other tiles on its left and right. And it has some other pattern, in this case open space, above it and below it. So it's working so far, so I'm going to write the other, how many would it be? I guess 12, 16 of them total, names for tiles. And then I'm going to use my logic that appears to be working already that can look around a tile and say, oh, are you touching a similar tile? And then combine the two, and hopefully be able to render arbitrary tiles, and it'll pick the piece that has the appropriate edges all around it. That'll become the floor for the houses in the game. And then I will make another version, hopefully with identical logic, but possibly not, that will match wall tiles. And that'll be more impressive looking aesthetically. That'll look, hopefully, like these wall tiles. Though these are just kind of placeholders too. But, you know, there'll be a corner tile. Maybe a tile alone will be drawn as a column. Maybe it'll be drawn as a thick piece of wall, not really sure yet. I don't actually think this covers every permutation, even though it seems like it does. There'll be something that, rather than guess about, I'm just going to make, and then I'll know aesthetically pretty soon whether it'll work or not. I'm having a hard time seeing what I did with this pattern. Oh, that's right, I put pink things. I just have to look at the pink. This is a tile has an edge on the top. This is a tile that has an edge on the right, edge bottom, edge left. In fact, I'm just going to see skipping these last two rows, whether this works already, by writing the tedious logic for it. My idea for that is I'm going to make a function called select tile. It's going to take this information about right, left, up, down, whether there was a neighbor there, and it's going to return the name of the tile that is what you want for that scenario. I'm going to make it return the center tile here as the default tile. So there'll be a tile with no edges for the cases I haven't made yet. So I've wired that together now, so to speak, and the only tile that it looks for is this tile, the one which I call the lone tile, and it'll find this case if it exists, and for everything else it just says it's a center tile. So it looks like it's at least working so far. I'm going to write the other cases in, and these should start to fill in with their appropriate tiles. I'm going to make it a giant else if, because who cares? Is that good coding logic? I don't think so. And it does actually matter what order these get evaluated in, but I haven't, well, I'd have to add the rest before I reach that problem. So now there's a few more cases in there. You can see them. If something is open, or if there's an edge on two sides, those tiles are now part of the set. This will be the case also where it matters what order I write these conditions in, because when there's a when I've added the tiles that have border on 3 sides, they'll need to take precedence over the ones that have border on 2 sides, which just means they're going to be higher up in this list of return statements. See, I've mixed the words up and top throughout this as well. It'll be easy to change in the end, though. So now it's starting to fill itself in pretty well. We've got pieces that have a border on only one side, and we've got pieces that have a border on 2 sides. And then we've got the original needing a border on all sides. I'm going to do the corners next, which is the second row in here. Might have to open the original image to see. Wait, no, that's not right. It's this row, which is the corners. So this is a corner against up and right. In fact, I'm just going to name them like that. That's going to be called upright. So there's upright being drawn. I just wanted to draw it real quick, make sure I hadn't confused anything already. Some of these pieces are already, are almost completely done with their borders. The last case is this last row, things that are surrounded on 3 sides. And then there should be complete borders for all parts of the pattern. And these are the cases that have to be at the top because they involve more of the conditions, and they have to trump, like something that's you got a border on 3 sides needs to trump something that is a corner, which would also be true in that case. So for that, I just put them at the top. Hopefully it works out. So now I've added those last few. I named them per which opening they have, opening to the bottom, the top, the left, the right. They're now in there, and we can see this shape of arbitrarily picked tiles. We can now scan around each tile, figure out what's touching it, what's not touching it, and we can pick from the tile sheet the right piece. These are kind of pointless being gray with just a little pig tab to point at their edge, but when it could become any pattern, really. I'm not using it for grass. I'm going to use it only for construction, ground tiles, wood, stone, anything fancy. But I'm also use it for the walls too, so hopefully I can use this technique on a lot of things. I'll clean it up before I stream again, and next time I will draw some walls and do it with those, and then maybe do some streams of coming up with the artwork for the actual texture, not just this sort of placeholder thing, and constructing a house in the game, ideally. Looks good for now. Thanks for watching.